Okay, now we're official. So, how many people have taken the test this week? I know of at least three that have passed so far and gotten their license. Anybody else?
Yeah, I still got a little bit of a wait over here. I got to wait until June 10th to take my test.
Oh, really? Well, actually, that's not too far away. Okay, well, cool. Just keep working at it. If you relax very long, you'll forget a lot of the stuff, and then you'll have a struggle with it. As soon as you're ready, go take it. Okay, David, still in the 60s, some low 70s. Hey, you're getting pretty close. If you can consistently get up to 75 or better, you're ready. Go grab it. Okay. Well, tonight is going to be kind of a wrap up. We're just going to cover a few miscellaneous things. Um, oh, Sean. Oh, you're up in the 60s. Good job. You're getting close. And a couple of people have mentioned that there's some testing places. There's one at the Sandpoint Library. They're testing every other month. And I was told that you can access that through examtools.org. It's all one word, exam and tools. And let's see, there's also one in July. Is that the same one through the Bonner County Aries website?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So you can also access that through the Bonner County Aries website and for signing up for that class. So anybody that lives up in that direction, there's a place for testing. And for those who live here in Kootenai County, you can go to the k7id.org website, and there's a place there where you can sign up for testing. And I know there's some places over in Spokane area too. I don't have those right in front of me. Okay, any questions before we get started? Let's here we go. There we go. All right, now we can see. Okay, so tonight, oops, there we go. Okay, there's a picture of somebody's ham shack. Um, I thought this was something you might like to see. You see this box right here? Looks like probably somebody made that. We refer to that as a Go kit. There's probably handles on each side. So you can unplug everything and just pick that whole box up, put it in your car and drive somewhere and set it up and have all of your radio equipment there. There's various types. I've got a smaller one that's kind of like that. Um, but it makes it nice if you like to travel around and set up your equipment somewhere else. Okay, and here's a good place to do it. There's a thing called Field Day, and it's always on the fourth weekend of June. I think it's the fourth full weekend. So, and this particular one is here in Kootenai County. This is on Meyer Road in Post Falls. And what they do at a field day is all the ham radio operators come in and they set up all their equipment, set up antennas, set everything up for communication. And they invite anybody that'd like to come over and use it. Come over and use their equipment, talk on the radio. A lot of these are HF radios that talk around the world, and you can get on the air and talk to somebody in Japan or China or Hong Kong or South America, Canada. I mean, they talk all over the world. So it's kind of fun. Gives you an opportunity to kind of try it out before you actually buy any equipment. So that's going to be coming up pretty soon. It's the fourth weekend of June. So, and this is worldwide. These are being held all over the world. They're all on the same day. So you can, talk to people across the country or across the world or anywhere that you would like to. So they're kind of fun. I'd encourage you to go to one of them. Okay, Hamfest. This is another event that happens quite regularly, usually during the summer months, and it's basically a swap meet for ham radio equipment. People bring in all kinds of electronic stuff, radios, radio related things, and it's up for sale. And you can usually get a pretty good bargain. Just kind of look around, and usually it's somebody selling equipment that they themselves have used, so they can tell you all about it, tell you how it works and everything. And you can get them for uh, pretty inexpensive. So there's going to be a Hamfest here. I don't have the date for it right now, but those vary almost every weekend all through the summer. There's a Hamfest somewhere. Some people like to go to the Dayton, Ohio Hamfest. It's the biggest Hamfest in the world, and it's I think it's like about a square mile of people set up with all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can buy anything you want there. Yeah, you can't even walk through the whole place in one day. I've never been there, but I know some people that have, and it's just unbelievable the amount of equipment that's there. But we also have them locally too. Okay, so let's talk on the radio. When I teach these classes live, I usually bring in a radio and have everybody talk on it. We can't do it over the internet. So I did a little bit of a video. I'll show it to you here in just a minute. When you're actually talking on the radio, you have to keep in mind that the audio at the other end is not as clear as you might think it would be. And sometimes, especially if you're doing letters, like your call sign, um, letters like C, E, B, D, they all kind of sound about the same over the radio. And you're constantly having to say, was that, well, like in my call sign, it's KE7VMN. And people say, is that VMN or a VMN or BMN or CMN? I have to repeat it 2 or 3 times. So we normally use the phonetic alphabet, and that way. So if I give my call sign, it's like Kilo Echo 7 Victor Mike November. And that way, it's very clear. They get it the first time. Um, but if you just use the letters, sometimes they don't always get it. Um, there are actually two phonetic alphabets in the world or in the market, I guess if you want to call it that. The phonetic alphabet that we use is actually the military style. This is what's used in military and aircraft and aviation and that kind of stuff. I think ships also use them. There's also a civilian phonetic alphabet. If you've ever listened to the police or the fire department on a scanner, you'll notice they use a different phonetic alphabet. Typically, the letters they use are names of people, like it's Adam, Boy, Charlie, David, and so forth. So they use different words, but it means the same thing. So that's something that you're probably going to want to get familiar with. I don't remember if there's any test questions on it, but it's for the purpose of making sure that they understand what you're saying, and mostly for your call sign, or if you have to spell something. It's very handy, and people do use it a lot. Probably need to use it more than we do, but you'll want to get familiar with that. Okay. There's another thing called the Q code, which is not really used very much anymore. Where this came from is way back in the days of Morse code. As you know, Morse code is very slow to send or receive. You not only have to spell every word, you have to spell every letter of every word, and it's very time consuming. So they developed some shortcuts just to save time and make it go a little bit faster. And these are some of the shortcuts. They all start with the letter Q. And, for example, if you could say QRG, that's the exact frequency. If you're sending a frequency or telling somebody a frequency, or QRL means I'm busy. I can't talk right now. QRM is interference. The only ones that we really use much anymore is this one, like his QSL. Okay, that's just an acknowledgement that I received your message, that I understood it. And over the years, they've actually have QSL cards. It's a little postcard so that when you make a contact with somebody, they write down all the information on this postcard and they'll mail it to you. So and you can actually collect these postcards of people you've talked to all over the world, and you can make up some of your own. But they can actually do it electronically now. You can log into the website and do it with a computer to send a QSL card. But it's just a fun thing. It's not required. Um, and let's see, there's QSO. This one here, this QSO, you'll sometimes hear people say it's a QSO. That's what that means over and that's basically you've communicated with a person. That's called a QSO. Um, and it just acknowledges that you've had some conversation with a certain individual. Sometimes you'll hear ham radios refer to what's called a QSO party. That's where you get a bunch of people together, you all talk over the radio and sure you're communicating with each other. And that's what that QSO means. QSP, that's a relay. Sometimes you're in an area where you can't reach whoever you're trying to talk to and somebody else needs to relay for you. So you do as a QSP. QST, you'll hear that one a lot, especially when they start the nets. They'll always announce QST, QST, QST. It's basically a call that says, hey, everybody, listen, I'm about to say something. So you're basically just calling all amateur radios. QSY, that means I'm changing to another frequency. You can, say QSY to 146.98. That means I'm changing frequency or changing channels to that frequency. QTH is sometimes used. That's your location or your home or wherever your ham shack is. That's your QTH. The rest of them really aren't used much anymore, very rarely. But that's where they came from. They were just shortcuts way back. And this isn't the whole list. There's a huge long list of them. But when you're sending Morse code, you can send 3 letters and actually send a whole sentence. Okay, grounding and lightning arresters. Um, this is something that you really want to take seriously. Especially portables is not a problem, but if you have like a base station or something, lightning just really loves two-way radios, especially when you're transmitting. If you're transmitting over the air, boy, that just attracts lightning a lot. So it was well worth the investment to invest in some lightning protection. They do have these lightning arresters, like this one right here. This is a fairly inexpensive one, but it does work pretty good. You plug your coax into here. This part is grounded, and then this goes up to your antenna. And what it does is if any lightning hits your antenna, this lightning box, these lightning arresters, they can't stop lightning. A bolt of lightning, you're talking over 100 million volts of power, and that little box isn't going to stop it. But what it will do is it will deflect it. Because lightning is trying to get to ground. And if you give it an easy path to ground, it will probably go there and not through your equipment. So that's what that does. And it's very, very, very important that this is grounded. You have to have a really good ground outside to a ground rod or something, because when lightning strikes, it's going to come through here and go to that ground, and it's trying to get to the ground, to the earth. These I think are like in the $20-$25 range or so. This is a more of a commercial type. This is about $50. But in my opinion, it's very well worth the investment because it will protect your equipment. Polyphaser is a very well-known brand for lightning protection. And again, you just hook your antenna in one end, and this is the coax going to your radio. And this, you actually ground it with this whole plate. It's grounded to a metal plate like this one right here. See, these are lightning arresters. And we tie it to a ground plate, and then you have to have a good, that's not a very good ground rod, but you need a really good ground that goes to earth. Oh, here it is right here. It needs to go to earth ground. And here's another ground plate. The more grounding you can put on your equipment, the better your equipment will survive. I typically ground everything, every piece of equipment, every radio, every power supply, duplexers, any equipment that I have, ground it all, and that will help protect it from the lightning. Because you want to get that lightning out of the building, outside. Don't let it come inside. So lightning protection is a very, very good investment. It'll save your equipment. Okay, taking care of your radio, the battery. One of the things that a lot of people do wrong with portables is leave the radio in the charger all the time. And when it's time for the net, you take it out of the charger, turn it on, check into the net, turn it off, and then put it back in the charger. That's really hard on a battery. What you need to do is put the battery on the charger at nighttime, let it charge overnight. In the daytime, take it off. Don't leave it in there all the time. And in fact, batteries like to be exercised. And even if you're not using the radio, I turn the radio on. Just let it run all day, even if it's just sitting on the table and doing nothing. It's because it's good exercise for the battery, and your battery will last a lot longer if you use it and exercise it and charge it properly. But don't leave it in the charger all the time. That'll just cook your battery down to nothing. Okay, and programming. This for anybody that's interested, next week I'm going to show you how to program your radio using a computer. And a computer is much, much easier than trying to do it with a keypad on the front. You can do it with a keypad, but it's very time consuming. It's very painful. Um, if you do it with a computer, it's so much easier. And I'm going to show you how to do that next week if you're interested. The one of the things that you want to be very, very careful of is make sure that all the numbers are correct. What I normally do, once I program a radio, I have somebody else check it, check to make sure all the numbers are correct. Because you can just have one digit off and it's going to put you someplace where you're not supposed to be. So make absolutely sure that your numbers are programmed in there correctly. Let's see. Okay, digital modes. When we talk about digital, there's actually two different definitions of digital. I think I went over this in one of the earlier classes. If you have an actual digital radio, it will transmit and receive digitally over the air. And those are, you have to get radios that are capable of that. And I think I talked about it, was it last week or the week before? How you can get into like DMARC and that kind of thing. Those are digital radios, they're digital modulation. But most of the digital that people are referring to is actually sending digital data over an analog radio. As a very good example of that would be like a fax machine. See, a fax machine is sending digital data over a telephone line, which is an analog system. Um, and there's a number of different methods of doing that, but we can also do it over the radio. And typically anything you can send over a phone line, you can also send it over the radio. There's a way to do it. So I'm going to show you some of the basic digital formats there are. And these are all digital messages sent over an analog radio system. It's not digital modulation. Sorry, I gotta get rid of that. There. Okay, there's one that's called RTTY, and that's the old-fashioned radio teletype. They used to use them back in the 1940s, 1950s. They were pretty popular. You can send, it's basically a special machine. You can type in a message and send it. Back in those days, they were sending it over phone lines, but you can send it over a radio too. and they do exist. Those systems are still around, and you can send messages using the RTTY system, but that stands for radio teletype. Picture keeps freezing up. There. Okay, another one. This is actually a pretty popular one. It's called PSK31, and that stands for phase shift keying. The way that works is you're basically transmitting a tone, and it's very rapidly shifting the frequency of that tone back and forth between two different tones. And you know, one frequency of the tone represents a one, and the other frequency represents a zero, and so it very rapidly shifts back and forth. And the 31 means 31 bits per second. It's pretty slow, but it does work. You can't send high-speed digital over a two-way radio. So it's the PSK, that's phase shift keying at 31 bits per second. And there's also FSK, which is frequency shift keying, which is almost the same thing. It's just a slight different method of doing it. But again, they're just sending a tone. We're transmitting a tone and just very rapidly shifting the frequency of that tone back and forth. And that represents digits, or their bits of data. So you can send messages like text messages and emails and that kind of thing using these methods. And typically what you can do is connect a computer to your radio, and you type a message, you know, like send a message on the radio. You have to use special software for it. And you can send an email, basically type in your message and you push send, and it will transmit over the radio, and somebody at the other end can receive it and they'll see it on their computer. So these are actually used quite a bit. A lot of people use them. PSK31 and FSK. They're both very popular. There's another one called Packet. I think last week, or was it last week or 2 weeks ago, I talked about packets of data where you can send like your Bluetooth and wireless internet and so forth. They send it in packets. So the data is broken up into small packets, and they send one packet at a time. And you can do that over a two-way radio too. It's a lot slower. It's not nearly as fast as a Bluetooth is. But the way it does, it takes whatever message you've created, whatever email you've made, and it breaks it up into small packets. And it will transmit one packet, and then the unit at the other end will transmit that packet back to verify that it's correct. And if it's correct, then the computer will send the next packet. And you know, the sending, or the unit at the other end sends it back to verify each time. And if it gets some interference or something and one packet doesn't get through, then the computer will automatically send it again. So it's basically, it works just like wireless internet, you know, Bluetooth and so forth, but it's much, much slower. It's not nearly as fast as the digital methods that are out there. So packet radio is a thing, and it does happen, and people do use it. There's another one called PACTOR, which is packet teletype over radio, which is pretty much the same thing, where you're using you know, some type of a computer program. You type a message on your computer and send it, and it goes over the air. But it uses the teletype method rather than the packet method, but it still accomplishes the same thing. And there's another one called WinMore. That's Windows messaging over radio. So you can use your Windows computer, create a message, send it over the radio, and receive a message back. So those are all digital methods, and that's usually when people talk about using digital, that's what they're talking about, is one of these. Okay, as far as talking on the radio, we have a term, it's called a net. That's basically a network of communications. And in a net, it was a communication network. And here's some basic rules of doing a net or participating in a net. When you normally check into a net, you use only your first name and your call sign. We don't send last names over the radio for security reasons. So it's just your first name only and your call sign. And you can check into, and some people just use their call sign. That's fine. You can check into a net, and the purpose of the net is to test your equipment, check propagation, and to pass traffic. You'll hear that announced every time. So it's a good way to get a little bit of experience using a radio because all you need is just your call sign, really, or your first name and your call sign. You just check in. And just prior to the class, you may have heard when I was checked into the net, that's the CARS net, and that's it. And sometimes you can do a little chit chat back and forth if you want to, but really all it's required is just your first name and your call sign. And there's nets all over everywhere. Every system has nets. Some of them are every day, some of them are once a week, some of them are once a month, but they're all over everywhere. So just check in. It's a good learning process. It also helps you learn how to operate your radio. For most people, when you get this radio and you open it up and you go see all those buttons and go, oh gee, what do I do with all this? So you can kind of learn how to operate the radio, what the buttons do, what they're for, how to talk on it and so forth. Um, and especially if you're using a portable, portables don't always work everywhere. And you kind of learn there's certain dead spots you have to stay away from. Um, I know at my house, when I check into the net, certain parts of the house, I can't get into the computer or into the repeater, but other parts I can. So you kind of learn where those spots are. And it also helps you to get to know other operators. You learn people over the air. You learn their names. You kind of learn a little bit about them, and you get to be good friends. I have lots and lots of friends on the radio I've never met before. So, but it's kind of fun. Okay, there's another term that you may hear. It's called an SWL. If you were listening to the net earlier, in fact, I checked everybody in our class in as an SWL. That means a shortwave listener, and that's anybody who's within earshot while you're talking on the radio. If they can hear the radio and they're listening to it, you can check them in, even if they're not a ham radio operator. So you might have your husband or wife or your children or somebody or just a friend that happens to be sitting by, and you can check them in as a shortwave listener. So we like to see how many check-ins we can get each week. It's kind of fun just to keep track of the numbers. So that's really the purpose of a net. That's why we do it. And they're beneficial. There's a lot of things you can learn from them. And you can also teach other people and share messages. And there's all kinds of fun things you can do. Okay, I have a little video here. I do a short net. Oops. I do a little net on Sunday nights. It's just a little 15-minute. And I recorded one of them one night. So let me. This one. The right one. Too many windows open. Let's see. Open earlier. Okay, here we go. Tonight, I want to demonstrate how a net is conducted. Right now, the Cars Club is just finishing up their net. And as soon as theirs done, I'm gonna start my net. I'll be the net control operator. And you can watch and see how that happens. So we'll just give them, they got about 2 more minutes left and then we'll start our net.
What you like for your ham station is, and they have deep pockets, please come down. It's an idea, very good, find her, all of the above. The above station, good answer. Any others, Northwest Traffic now? Okay, that was kind of a fun exercise, take a little heat off of you from the harrowing simplex exercises. We'd like to thank everyone for checking in and also thank the members of CARS, our local club, for the use of these repeaters. Tomorrow night, net control is going to be Neil, K2A, MF. I'm going to return the Q7ID repeaters back to normal use. And for Neil, AMF, let's see here, the count, the total of the evening is 3232. 73, everyone, AI 7H is clear. Amen.
Well, thank you, Ed. We appreciate that. And good evening, everyone. This is Dale, KE7VMN, Net Control Station, calling the Coeur d'Alene State ERC net. This net meets every week at 19:15 hours or 7:15 p.m. local time on the CARS Club repeater system. We have 3 repeaters that are linked together, the Mica Peak repeater, the Canfield repeater, and the Little Blacktail repeater.
K7ID repeater.
This net is directed to the Coeur d'Alene Stake members and visitors. The purpose of this net is to allow members and visitors to test their equipment, check propagation, and to pass information. Emergency traffic will be given priority at any time during this net. At this time, are there any stations with traffic announcements for the net? Just as a reminder, for those who have GMRS capability, there is a regional net on GMRS channel 21, that's a repeater, or also known as GMRS channel 7. And that will take place at 7:30, immediately following this net. Okay, if we have no more announcements, we'll proceed. This is Dale, KE7VMN, Net Control Station. Calling now for member and visitor check-ins. When checking in, please give your name, your call sign, and the unit you represent. Or if you're a visitor, please indicate. Any check-ins, please come now.
7, Romeo Delta November. Big Bob, very small port. Very small port.
Okay, we had a double there. I did copy Bob K7 RDS, or RDN, I'm sorry. Can't read my own writing. And then we also had another double there. Do you want to come back again?
Double was Dustin, Prairie Falls Ward. Kilo Charlie 7, India Mike Juliet, KC7 IMJ.
Well, good evening, Dustin. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate that. Hope you have a good evening. And Bob, thank you for checking in as well. Hope you have a good evening. Any other check-ins, please come now.
This is Kilo Juliet 7, India Uniform Tango, Ryan from Plummer, portable at a place called Belgrove, which is north of Whiting Creek. On top of a hill called Rolling Hill. I'll be out TV now, just another KG719.
Well, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate that. And you have an excellent signal tonight for being on a portable. And hope you enjoy your day off. Have a good evening.
Kilo Juliet 7, Mike Uniform Alpha, Shannon, Physical Cam Valley, visitor, no problem.
Good evening, Shannon. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate that. Hope you have a good evening. Any other check-ins, please come now.
Seven, Oscar Tango Delta, Jim, phone call, visitor.
Oh, good evening, Jim. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate that. Hope you have a good evening. Any other check-ins, please come now. Yeah, I heard a repeater key up, but I did not hear any voice. You want to come back again?
Juliet 7, Echo Sierra Delta, Tom. Visitor, Spirit Lake, no traffic.
Well, good evening, Tom. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate that. Hope you have a good evening. Hey, any other check-ins, please come now.
212 Alpha Mike Foxtrot, visitor.
Well, good evening, Neil. Thank you for checking in. You got Josie and the Pussycat too?
Can you check in like we do for the Northwest Traffic Net? Do you take well, the controls operator plus anyone else that's around? I didn't know. I don't know about that.
Yes, we can take in anyone that wants to check in.
Well, now I know we'll get through so much. So that's me till the end of Pussycats. Have a great net and enjoy the what's left of the weekend. Get to him.
Well, thank you, Neil. We appreciate that, and thank you for checking in. And tell Josie hi for us. This is KE7 VMN, Net Control Station. We're still looking for some more check-ins. Yes, go ahead, recheck.
Let's go get 7 up to Tango Delta with Pat. Your student, my wife.
Well, cool. Thank you for checking her in. We appreciate that. And tell her hi for us.
Will do. 7 up to And we also got, Echo 7 Alpha Delta Tango and, Echo 7 Alpha Delta November visiting. Got a two for here. Good evening.
Well, good evening, Bearpaw. Thank you for checking in tonight. We appreciate that. And tell Gabby hi for us. Well, I can hear the wave. We appreciate that. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you checking in. Any other check-ins, please come now.
7 Echo Curtis, St. Mary's 5.
Well, good evening, Curtis. Thank you for checking in. And I'll get back with you here in just a few minutes for some reports. Any other check-ins, please come now.
So, 7 Hotel November Charlie, then 9 Mile Falls, no traffic, out clear.
Well, good evening, Ben. Thank you for checking in. Good to hear from you tonight. And I hope you have a good evening. Any other check-ins, please come now. Yeah, I got somebody, sounds like we're trying to get in, but I couldn't quite copy it. All we got was noise. Can you maybe try a different location and try again? Well, I can tell you're there, but I still can't quite make it out. All I've got was noise. Can you maybe try one of the other repeaters? Okay, we'll give that check-in a minute to see if we can maybe get a better signal. Meanwhile, were there any more check-ins? Please come now.
K7ID repeater.
Well, thank you, Jesse. Good to hear from you tonight. Thank you for checking in, and I hope you have a good evening. Any other check-ins, please come now. Okay, well, we got a little break here. Let's go back to Curtis. Are you still there?
Good evening, Dale and Annette. Annette, this is Curtis, 87 St. Mary's.
Well, good evening, Curtis. You got some numbers for me tonight?
Yes, sir. Ready to copy?
I am. Got my pencil all warmed up.
Okay, well, we'll have to get you half hour digi all locked up here. St. Mary's, 5 liter, St. Mary's FRS. 5 leadership, 9 total. Former FRS, 4 leadership, 8 total. The 2-meter voice net, 5 leadership, 9 total. 2-meter digital, 2 leadership, 2 total.
Okay, I copied St. Mary's with 5 and 9, Plummer with 4 and 8, the 2-meter voice with 5 and 9, and the 2-meter digital with 2 and 2.
That's a good copy. 8070.
Okay, and in addition to that, I can add from the Pleasant View ward, we had 2 leadership and 7 total check-ins. Prairie Falls had 1 leader and 2 check-ins. Syringa ward had 1 leader and 2 check-ins. And we did have 1 visitor and no missionaries.
Yeah, in my thing, remember also missionaries, 1 companionship for St. Mary's.
Okay, copied 1 missionary set for St. Mary's and Plummer.
Yeah, they share the same set, so it's just 1 set.
Okay, well, that will work. Okay, well, thank you for the report. We appreciate that and hope you have a good evening this evening. We've got about 3 minutes left in our net. Let's see if we have any more check-ins before we wrap it up. I think the commercials must be over. The ball game's back on. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And just as one more reminder, there is a GMRS regional net, which is going to start in about 3 minutes. So anyone has the GMRS capability, please check in there. So this is Dale, KE7VMN, Net Control Station. Is there anything more for the net this evening? Hey, we would like to thank those who participated in the net this evening and those who stood by while the net was in progress. We would also like to thank the Cars Club and members of the club for allowing us to use their repeater system to conduct the net tonight. This is Dale, KE7VMN, Net Control Station. Now closing the Coeur d'Alene State ERC net. The system is now returned to normal amateur use. Okay, so that's how a net is conducted. We do this one every Sunday night, but there are lots and lots of other nets out there. So we would encourage you to check into any of them. They're kind of fun and they're easy to do. Okay, let's go back into the classroom now. Okay, tonight I want to demonstrate how. There we go. Okay, well, it ran kind of long, but that's just a little short net. There's much longer ones and a lot of fun. Just I really encourage you to check into nets whenever you can. And who knows, you might be a net control operator in the near future. The one that was conducting the net just before class started tonight is he was in my class about a year ago. He and his wife both got their license. Okay, I want to go over just very quickly. I don't want to go too late tonight. There we go. Okay, how to make a contact. You know, if you want to talk to somebody on the radio, or if you want to talk on the radio, I actually have a video for this, but we're running out of time, so I'm just going to explain it. So how do you make a contact over the radio? There's several methods. There's a general contact with anybody. Like if you just want to go out there and say, hey, I'm here, anybody want to talk? The way you would do that is I would give my call sign, KE7VMN, and just say monitoring. So KE7VMN monitoring. That lets people know that my radio's on and I'm here if anybody wants to talk. And sometimes people will come back and say, hey, yeah, how are you doing? And, you know, start a conversation. So that's just to talk to anybody that's out there. If you're wanting to contact a specific person, then the way you do that is you give the call sign of the person you want to talk to, and then say, this is your, and then your call sign. So this is my friend here, WI0F. This is KE7VMN. So I'm wanting to talk specifically to him. So if he's listening, hopefully he'll come back and answer me. So that's another method to make a contact. Okay, if there's a conversation going on and you want to join the conversation, the way you would do that is you can, as soon as you get a break in the conversation, all you have to do is say contact, or you can say comment, either one. And that just lets them know that, hey, I want to join your group. And usually somebody will come back and say, hey, go ahead, contact. And then you get on the air and you start talking and you're part of the conversation. It's not uncommon to get 2 or 3 or 4 different ham radio operators all in a joint conversation and talking back and forth. The one thing you do want to keep in mind, though, is you want to make a break every once in a while in case somebody wants to join in, or if somebody needs to make a contact or something. You don't want to keep the airwaves tied up so tightly that nobody else can get in. So every time you say something over the radio, you know, pause just for a second, you know, it's to see if anybody else wants to get in, and then the next person can join, or next person can come back, or something like that. So you just need to keep in mind that other people want to use the system too. So give them a break every now and again. So that's 3 different methods where you can get on the air and just talk to somebody. So, okay. Now I was going to actually have a video where I demonstrate this, but due to the lack of time, I think we're going to skip the video for tonight. Tips for checking into a net. One thing you have to keep in mind that as much as it seems like it, radio communication is not instantaneous. You know, when you push that button, there's probably almost a full second before the person on the end actually hears it. There is a bit of a delay. So when you push the button, wait a second or two and then start talking. Otherwise, you end up cutting off your first word. We have problems with that quite often, actually. Somebody will key up and then start talking immediately, and you don't get the first 2 or 3 letters of their call sign because they started talking too quickly. So always pause. A lot of times what I tell people is when you pick up the microphone, you push the button, and by the time you get the microphone up to your mouth, then the system is up and running and you can go ahead and talk. So, pause at least 1 to 2 seconds before you start talking. Another tip is to speak slowly, because especially if you're in a net, because somebody's trying to write all this down. We get some people that get on the radio and they give their call signs so fast that I have to say, can you slow down and say that again, please? Because you just can't write fast enough. So speak slowly, especially when you're giving your call sign, so that people can understand. So when you give your call sign, use the phonetic alphabet and do it slowly so that people can write it down, so people can understand. There's a term called 73. I don't know if you caught that in the video there. 73. Now this is one of those shortcuts way back from the days of Morse code. The number 73 is just a greeting. It's basically saying like good evening, good night, have a good day, or something like that. And it's quite often used at the end of a conversation or the end of a net or the end of something. So the net control operator may come over and say, okay, good night, 73 to everyone. And that's it just means good night or good evening or have a good day or something like that. It's a greeting. And some people, actually going back on that 73, some people tend to put an S on the end of it and they'll say 73s, but it's not 73s, it's just the number 73. Okay, the repeater ID. See, every repeater also has a call sign in addition to individuals having call signs. So the repeater will periodically key up and broadcast its call sign. A lot of times they do it in Morse code. So if you hear that beep, 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 beep in the background, well, that's the repeater giving its call sign in Morse code. Some of the repeaters have voice controllers where it'll actually send a voice giving the call sign, but most of them it's just Morse code. So that's what that beeping noise is in the background. And one of the rules for call signs is you have to give your call sign at least once every 10 minutes. So if you've been talking for more than 10 minutes and you haven't given your call sign, then you need to do that. Some people are kind of sticklers about that. If you go too long without giving your call sign, somebody may call you on it and say, hey, you need to give your call sign a little more often. But the repeater also does the same thing. Every 10 minutes, whenever the repeater's in use, it will broadcast its call sign. So when it's broadcasting the call sign, you just have to wait till it's done, and then you can talk. You can talk over the Morse code, but it's sometimes really hard to hear. So the best thing is just wait till it's done. So you do have to remember to give your call sign at least once every 10 minutes. But that's only during, times when you're actively on the radio. So you need to, you don't necessarily have to start out with your call sign, but once you've been talking for at least 10 minutes, then you need to give your call sign. And at the very end, when you're done talking, you sign off with your call sign. Okay, so those are actual rules. So, and there's probably some test questions about that.
Dale,
Yes.
when you were the controller, is that what you were on your net?
Yes, I was the control station.
You used the repeater call sign. You didn't use your own until the very end when you signed off finally. Is that normal procedure?
Are you sure it wasn't the repeater doing it? Because that particular repeater has a voice call sign. The call sign for the repeater is K7ID. And and it does it announces it in a voice.
Okay, I must have misheard. I didn't hear your call sign, but I thought it was something different. That's why I asked the question.
Oh, Well, I've been known to make mistakes. So it's quite possible I might have given the wrong one. But yeah, you should give your own call sign, and the repeater will give its own call sign. The repeaters here in Kootenai County, the 3 of them for the CARS system, they all have voice ID, is what we call it. So it actually comes on, there's a human voice that gives the call sign. There's also a thing on the repeater, it's called a courtesy tone. Not all repeaters have them, some do and some don't. But what that is when you're talking on the repeater, as soon as you let up, the repeater goes beep, and it that lets everybody know that you've stopped talking, so they can come back and reply. You know, I told you about that squelch tail back when we talked about repeaters. I think it was last week. You know, the squelch tail is when you're done talking, the repeater continues transmitting for anywhere from 1 to 3 seconds. They vary a little bit. So if it continues transmitting for 2, maybe 3 seconds, once the repeater has gone beep, you don't have to wait for the squelch tail to drop out. You can jump right back in there and reply. But that's what that beep is right at the end. They call it a courtesy beep. It's just to let you know that the person on the other end has stopped transmitting. But some repeaters have them and some don't. So those are just some tips on, checking into a net or even talking on the radio or talking on a repeater. Okay, and again, I was going to actually demonstrate with the video, but I think we'll skip that because we're pretty much out of time. Programming your radio. And actually, I'm not going to go into it tonight, but if anyone's interested, next class next week, I'm going to demonstrate how to program a radio using a computer. It is so much easier with a computer than it is to try and do it with a keypad on the front. A lot of radios, you can program them with a keypad, but it's a very painful process and prone to errors. So we'll take that up next week and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, I think we're about done for tonight. So next step is I want to hear everybody's got a ham radio license. Now I know a lot of you aren't going to be able to finish by the time class is done, and that's okay. I've had a lot of students that actually clear up to 6 months after the class before they actually got their license. So if you're not quite there yet, continue studying, keep working at it, keep taking the practice tests, and when you're ready, go take the test. Okay, any questions? Any thoughts? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you, Dale.
Okay, well, thank you for coming.